Welcome back to Planting Thoughts, the only podcast where your brain gets watered, fertilized, and occasionally pruned by a machete of psychology. I'm Mike, your friendly neighborhood dopamine peddler. Now, last episode 18, we went into drugs and drug addiction and the way your brain betrays you harder than that one friend who forgets to Venmo. And you know that always happens.
Oh, yeah. And I'm back. I was gone because I was at a wedding, which, let's be honest, is basically cult light. Matching outfits, coordinated rituals, and a leader at the front making everyone chant, "Do you take this person?" At least no one tried to sell me advanced enlightenment for $99,999.
Yeah, give it time. But if you haven't listened to episode 18, stop right now. Go back. It's the prequel to today's chaos. Trust me, you'll understand why I think tequila is a cult leader in liquid form.
Today, we're diving into cults, why people join, why they stay, and how psychology research makes it all feel horrifyingly predictable.
Yeah, strap in, folks. It's going to get dark, nerdy, and just the right amount of blasphemous.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
First myth to bust, people don't join cults because they're dumb. They join because cults hack human psychology.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of people do think that, why would you do that? I would never, right, yeah. But if you look back to Milgram's obedience study, and he's really the OG here, right? I mean, he showed that ordinary people would shock the heck out of strangers if an authority figure tells them to, right? Replace the lab coat with a robe and beads, and voila. You're obeying Master Steve because he says so. And let's be real, Master Steve doesn't even hold a candle to Klaus from the Umbrella Academy.
Then there's Asch's conformity experiments. When everyone else says the short line is tall, most of us cave. Cults crank that up by making you the only new person in a sea of chanting, true believers. The pressure is like peer pressure on steroids.
Yeah, real pressure. And then you add in this thing called the foot in the door phenomenon, right? And you're hooked. And then Friedman and Fraser found that if you say yes to a small request, you're more likely to agree to a bigger one later. And that's how a free self-discovery lecture turns into giving away your car and moving into the compound.
Or taking a job and joining a podcast.
Right.
Or, as I call it, the Airbnb cult pipeline. There's kind of that way you kind of travel into that.
Yeah, and then there's Festinger's when prophecy fails. If you've already made huge sacrifices, right? The cult's prediction flops or whatever, you have to double down instead of leaving. It's like your ex. You know they're terrible, right? I mean, they're horrible, but you've wasted so much time already, you stick it out.
And then you throw in the belongingness motive and you're hooked faster than a cat on catnip. Baumeister and Leary showed humans crave connection like oxygen. If you're lonely and a group showers you with love bombing, it's hard to resist that emotional pull.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, it may be not stupid, but maybe lonely, right? But that might be one of the trigger points. So cult recruiters are like master salespeople with a PhD in manipulation. They use Cialdini's door in the face, ask for the moon, then settle for less. Join our 10-day retreat. No. Okay. Just one evening? Suddenly, you're in.
Love bombing is huge. Everyone remembers your name, celebrates your breakthroughs, and makes you feel special. It's just an ingratiation plus belonging, essentially.
Right.
Scientology literally does this with wins during auditing.
Yeah, Scientology. They use Lifton's thought reform tactics, milieu control, which is basically cutting you off from outsiders. The sacred science, only we have the truth, right? And loading the language, teaching insider jargon so your brain shrinks to fit their dictionary, really.
And let's not forget exhaustion. Sleep restriction makes people more suggestible, according to Wheaton and Pipitone.
Yep.
So if your retreat schedule looks like a boot camp plus crying circles, it's not spiritual, it's sleep deprivation cosplay.
Right. Honestly, half of Silicon Valley startups, right? They use the same playbook. They work until 3 a.m. Call it passion. Translation, cult with laptops.
Essentially. So let's tackle the elephant in the auditing room, Scientology.
Okay.
The big question is it really a cult or just a quirky religion mixed with a side hustle?
Yeah, I think that's probably depends on who you ask. Scholars like Robert J. Lifton say if it fits his 8 criteria of thought reform, which is milieu control, sacred science, demand for purity, confession, loading the language, doctrine over person, dispensing of existence, and the mystical manipulation, then yeah, it's cult territory. And quite frankly, Scientology ticks most of those boxes.
Let's check. Information control, Check. They call critics suppressive persons and cut you off from them. Confession. Check. Auditing sessions gather all your secrets, which, let's be real, can be weaponized later.
Yeah, and I mean, then they have this financial escalation. You don't just join, you pay for these courses, right? And then you pay for advanced levels. And then you sell your house for the OT8 enlightenment. That's textbook sunk cost fallacy. Once you've spent thousands, leaving feels like financial suicide.
And then you have that charismatic authority piece, which is wild. Hubbard may have been a sci-fi writer, but his followers attributed sacred science status to his words. Conger and Kanungo called charisma a relationship, not just charm. And in Scientology, Hubbard wasn't just charming. He was framed as humanity's savior.
Fun fact. Paulhus and Williams' dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, they pop up in a lot of these cult leaders. Hubbard arguably leaned heavily on narcissism and Machiavellianism.
So yeah, if you're wondering if it's a cult, the research says if it quacks like a cult, it's probably a cult.
Probably a cult. Now, speaking of modern ones, NXIVM. This wasn't even religious. No. It was a corporate PowerPoint meets coercive control. Keith Raniere, right? He used this self-help language, right? And he would lure people in with these courses. And then he created this special program, DOS, which is the secret master-slave subgroup, which he created trauma bonds with coercion and branding. And Lalick would even call this coerced choice.
And then there's Heaven's Gate. Applewhite turned apocalyptic sci-fi into a death pact. That's Milgram's obedience plus Fessinger's prophecy failure on steroids. When you've given decades to a leader, the idea of boarding a spaceship suddenly makes a lot of sense.
And don't forget Shinriko. This is that cult in Japan, right? And they would recruit scientists and they would recruit engineers, smart, technically skilled people, right? By promising enlightenment. And then in March 20th, 1995, coordinated basically a sarin poison gas attack in the Tokyo subway, which killed around 13 people, I think, and injured thousands more. I think it was maybe up to 6,000.
Yeah, it was about 6,000 there.
And then they justified these attacks with this sacred science, right? It's charisma plus apocalyptic justification, which leads to terrorism.
So the bottom line is modern cults aren't all about robes and communes. They can look like corporations, yoga studios, or celebrity religions. They exploit the same psychological levers: obedience, conformity, sunk cost, trauma bonding, those kinds of things.
Or as I like to put it, new packaging, same brain hacks. Okay. So we've hit the big, modern cases, Scientology, NXIVM, Heaven's Gate, but how do you know if your group, your yoga class, or brunch crew is secretly a cult?
Rick Alan Ross, in his books Cults Inside Out, gives us 9 red flag characteristics. So kind of think of it as like a BuzzFeed listicle for cult spotting.
Number 1. Authoritarian. There's always one central leader, right? With unchecked power. If you're the group's guru, you make all the decisions from your diet to the dating life of your cult members, right? You're not in the book club, you're in a cult.
Number 2 would be oppositional. So cults frame the outside world as evil or misguided,
right.
Us versus them mentalities. So if your wellness group tells you the doctors are lying and only kombucha will save you, that's a cult red flag, not gut help.
Number 3. Only they have the truth. If your group says everyone else is blind and only their doctrine is the real path, congratulations, you found a cult or your ex's philosophy degree.
Oh my God. Number 4 is legalism. Rules on rules on rules. What to eat, how to dress, where to sleep. It's like HOA magnified. Break the rules, see number 7.
Which is sanction-oriented. Break a rule, get punished. Right? Sometimes it's shunning. Sometimes it's public humiliation, stuff like this. Sometimes it's scrubbing the floors with your toothbrush at 3 a.m. Either way, it's behavioral conditioning with a robe.
So number 5 is subjective. So belief is going to trump evidence.
Yeah.
If the leader says, I had a vision, then you better align, even if the vision is just a bad mushroom trip.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You better align, right? Otherwise, you're getting spanked. Number 6, personal conscious. The cult invades your personal identity. You don't just believe, you are the belief, right? Everything gets filtered through the group's lens, which makes it really difficult to sort of have your own identity.
Oh, 100%. And number 8 is esoteric.
Right.
So insider knowledge. Cults always have secret teachings that you only get after enough loyalty or payments. Think Scientology's operating Thetan levels or NXIVM's advanced training or, Xenu. looked into that.
Yeah, and finally, anti-sacerdotal, right? In translation, they don't want intermediaries, no priests, no external checks, only the leader themselves, right? They are the pipeline to salvation. It's spiritual monopoly.
So you put all 9 of these together and you basically got the cult starter pack. Not every group that has one is a cult, but if you're checking off 6 or 7, or maybe don't sell your house just yet.
Yeah, don't sell your house. Or do what I do. If a group starts chanting my name in unison, I leave. Unless it's karaoke night, then I stay for one more round.
I don't blame you. I'm a big karaoke person.
Me too.
So James Warren Jones started his first church in Indianapolis in 1955. He had dreamed of being a Pentecostal leader since he was a child, and it was only natural that he would preach from the pulpit.
Yeah, the People's Temple gained a considerable following, right, in Indiana, but they were pushed out of the town because of these integration views.
Yeah, they wanted to integrate into society.
Yeah.
So the group would follow Jones to California in 1965. While based in San Francisco, he became quite the political activist, even making connections with people like First Lady Rosalind Carter.
Okay. Now, did you know that First Lady Rosalind Carter was also photographed with notorious serial murderer and clown John Wayne Gacy?
No, that's a killer coincidence.
Through extensive research into things like political leanings and extradition laws, the temple decided to move to Guyana.
Whenever I'm planning a big move, my first thought is always, is there enough room for my books? Then the second thought is going to be, can they extradite me back to the U.S.?
Apparently not from Guyana. The research extended beyond Jones' apostolic socialist teaching. It also considered whether Black members would be treated fairly. The predominance of Black leaders in the political climate made Guyana an obvious choice, especially since Jones had already done the mission work there.
Guyana permitted Jones to lease 3,800 acres near the Venezuelan border. The soil was poor and the only water source was 7 miles away, which made the spot far less than the ideal for building a utopia.
Yeah, still, 500 members were sent initially to begin sort of constructing this village, preparing it, to support nearly like 1,000 people in a South American rainforest, so no easy task.
And this would ultimately lead to hundreds of followers moving with Jones to the compound that would live in infamy as Jonestown.
Yeah, and at Jonestown, tactics were used to keep the members on edge, right? And like kind of the things we talked about a few minutes ago. And these include things like staging drills where everyone was summoned and they were like forced to practice for the end times.
And those drills often ended with members drinking from a communal cup. Not real poison, but usually something like Kool-Aid or more specifically Flavor-Aid, the generic version.
Right. They called these white knights. It was Jones's way of conditioning his people, really. I mean, making sure they would obey without hesitation when the time came. It's really just behaviorism.
Oh, 100%. Following a visit from U.S. Congressman Paul Ryan in 1978, who came to investigate rumors of abuse, things escalated quickly. Some members begged to leave with Ryan, which Jones viewed as betrayal.
Now, I think the group leaving was attacked maybe at Port, I think it's Katuma,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
It was like this airstrip. Anyway, Congressman Ryan, several journalists, and defectors were all murdered.
And back at Jonestown, Jones gave his most famous order. He told his followers that death was the only way to remain free.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really sad because parents were forced to feed this poison drink basically to their babies and children before taking it themselves. And some of them would watch them, foaming at the mouth as their kids died.
There is footage of all of this, and It's horrific. In the end, more than 900 people died that day, including nearly 300 children.
Yeah, and the man behind it all, right? This preacher, the Southern Baptist preacher, this activist, right? The so-called prophet who was all into, desegregation, was none other than James Warren Jones.
The world would come to know him simply as Jim Jones.
Now, there's another cult that we would like to talk about, and they're an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they basically, helped America unpack one of the ugliest sort of cautionary tales ever. And this was the Branch Davidians. In 1993, they were under siege by the ATF. So
nothing like starting your week with federal forces on your front lawn energy. Let's run the facts, then talk human behavior, how manipulation, leadership, and escalation turn into catastrophe.
So basically, the timeline is like this. Agents from the ATF attempted to execute a search and arrest warrant at the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas on February 28, 1993. After a shootout, the FBI then conducted a 51-day standoff that ended on April 19th, 1993, when the compound burned.
The initial raid was bloody. 4 ATF agents were killed in the February gun battle, and according to ATF records, several Davidians were also killed that day.
Yeah, after weeks of negotiation, the FBI used CS gas, right? This poison gas, basically to try
tear gas.
Yeah, tear gas, right? They tried to force people out on April 19th. What happened, though, is it caught fire and it consumed the Mount Carmel complex, and dozens of people, roughly 70 to 80, including women and children, died in this inferno. Now, the scale of loss is one of the reasons Waco still reverberates today.
Now, the stickiest question, who started the fire? Official federal investigations, including the Justice Department's arson team, concluded that the blaze had multiple points of origin and found evidence consistent with fire set from inside the compound. That is the conclusion in the DOJ arson appendix.
Okay. There is controversy, though,
yes,
right? And that is important. Now, a later special counsel review on congressional reports dug into withheld evidence, pyrotechnic rounds, and whether, procedures were followed. So the special counsel's final report found no evidence that federal actions caused the fire, while also criticizing the secrecy and the record keeping. So, official investigations point to internal ignition, but critics keep asking the hard questions about tactics and transparency and so forth.
So, from a psychology of manipulation view, Waco is textbook. A charismatic leader, David Koresh, isolation, escalating us versus them rhetoric, strong in-group loyalty, and a siege context that amplified fear and fatalism. These social and cognitive pressures, plus trauma and real violence, create a situation where tragic collective choices become more likely.
So yeah, cults can be charismatic and weird, but Waco wasn't a movie. It was a chain reaction of leadership, ideology, law enforcement mistakes, and desperation. If you want one takeaway, watch for isolation, absolute insider narratives, and we're the only ones who understand this. These types of things are red flags.
And if you're curious, the primary sources are the DOJ Scruggs report, the Special Counsel of Danforth, final and congressional investigations. Read them before you surf the conspiracy board.
Right. Don't surf the conspiracy board.
Don't, because then you end up like us.
Okay, let's really unpack this, right? Because staying is often more psychologically interesting than joining.
Exactly. Once you're in, leaving feels like cutting off a limb. Public commitments matter. Fessinger's dissonance theory says once you've testified or recruited others, leaving means admitting you were wrong. That shame is going to be brutal.
Yeah, it is tough to admit mistakes, right? Especially something like this. And then there's groupthink, which was done by Janus in the 70s. And any doubt gets punished, right? And members censor themselves to avoid rejection. At isolation, and dissent basically evaporates.
Trauma bonding, according to Dutton and Painter, seals the deal. The leader alternates between abuse with affection. So you have this like on and off again thing going. It's like an emotionally abusive partner. The cycle of reward and punishment actually deepens that attachment.
Yeah, intermittent reinforcement makes it worse, right? Think slot machines. Sometimes you're loved. Sometimes you're shamed. That unpredictability is addictive. It's B.F. Skinner's lab pigeons, except you're the pigeon, and the lever is the leader's approval.
Lalick's bounded choice explains the existential trap. Leaders engineer the environment so every option points back to obedience. Leaving feels like walking to a void where you'll lose everything: community, identity, even salvation.
Plus, the sunk cost fallacy kicks in, right? You've given years, maybe money, maybe your own kids, right? Walking away feels like throwing your whole life in the trash can.
And let's not forget the illusory truth. Repeat something often enough and it feels real. In a cult, mantras and loaded language make their worldview the reality.
Yeah, so why do people stay? Because psychology traps them in a cage they helped build. And then they throw away the key out of fear, shame, and the need to belong.
That's dark. But at least we're not ending with sarin gas.
No, we're not.
No sarin gas. So cults don't thrive because people are weak. They thrive because people are human. Our brains are craving belonging, meaning, and certainly get hijacked.
Which leaves you with some homework. Where do you see cult-like dynamics in everyday life? Your job, your friend group, your TikTok algorithm that demands daily sacrifices of your attention span.
Think about it, debate it, and maybe call out your leaders next time they guilt trip you into bottomless mimosas.
That's it for today's episode. Remember, you are part of Planting Thoughts cult of billions of listeners worldwide. We even have a cute little name for you nerds: Succulents.
Billions, Mike?
Hey, the illusionary truth effect says that if I repeat this enough, people will begin to believe me.
Fine. So hit like, follow, or subscribe. Share with your friends, frenemies, and maybe even your neighborhood pyramid scheme recruiter.
I love those guys.
I do too.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep planting thoughts, and for the love of psychology, don't join anything that requires a blood oath.
Unless it's planting thoughts.
See ya.
Bye.